apply to every single thing that happens in an HOA, especially from a governance standpoint. So again, these laws were put in place as a safeguard for your rights and as well as your real estate investment. These laws also require the board of directors to act in a way that protects the members, you again, the homeowners, as well as the integrity of the association. And then finally, the fiduciary duty requires board members like us to act for the good of the association rather than for the benefit of ourselves or themselves. Okay.
Right. And I will add here that before I became a member of the board, I mean, I assumed that we had to follow all sorts of laws, you know, like federal laws, state laws. And then it was only when I became a member of the board and started taking educational courses about HOA management that I realized that there was a specific set of laws just governing HOAs. And so that's what we're talking about tonight.
And I should piggyback on that a little bit, Renee, by adding that these laws were put in place for a specific reason, and that is to make sure that they were applied. There was a time, many of you that have been here a while might remember before the Davis-Stirling Act came into play, where, you know, the way HOAs ran was almost like the good old days of cowboys and bandits. It was every man for himself. Any rule that you thought applied to your association was good enough for you, but maybe not applied to the others. So that was the reason why HOA laws like Davis-Stirling came into act. They standardized how all, and I can't overemphasize that, they standardized how all HOAs in California are expected to be governed and according to the law.
Right.
So,
right.
Okay.
And that safeguards all of us.
Absolutely.
Okay. So we're going to take you down this path, and we're just going to show you specific items to kind of get the timeline for you. So I'll start right here. So I gotta move this out of my way so I can see. So on Saturday morning, September 26th at 9:30 in the morning, all board members received a special executive session meeting notice. It went to all of the board members, of course, with an agenda. Okay, next thing, and the agenda, here's the agenda that was sent to us for this executive session. It indicates personnel issue, resignation of a director, and appointment of a replacement director. Enclosed, please find David Clark's letter of resignation. And then item B is reorganizational / election of officers. And I'm stressing these words because we're going to talk about those specific terms a little further on. So here's the letter of resignation. I'll just be quiet a moment and let you guys read this if you like. Okay, hopefully you're done. I think it's important to note that, so we received that initial notification on Saturday morning, or it was sent out, I should say, Saturday morning. I didn't actually receive it because I was sleeping. But I sent out a note to Mr. Clark to his board address at oursunnymeadranch.com, as well as to his private email address that we've all seen, saying, you know, I was sorry to hear about his resignation, but I saw that according to the agenda, he had intended to appoint his replacement, and I merely asked, who was that person going to be, since I knew nothing about this. I received no response whatsoever. Robert, and I'll go ahead and take this just to finish this timeline. So we received the notification of the meeting on the 26th for a meeting on the 28th. That meeting happened, and then 2 days later, an official, and I do say this, official notification came from the office to all of the homeowners that we have email addresses for, indicating that effective the 28th, the date of that meeting, Mr. Clark resigned from the board of directors. Homeowner Pat Escobar was appointed to replace him. The organizational meeting resulted in an officer selection, and it indicates those positions. So again, this is official. Robert, I'll let you go.
Yeah, and I think it's important in that particular slide as well, Renee, to remind everyone that up until the actual moment Shortly after that meeting started on the 28th, neither you nor I were aware of who the individual was that was going to be appointed.
Right,
So,
and we will say right here, I'm going to jump to the middle of your slide. So as directors, this is kind of interesting. As directors, we, by virtue of Davis-Stirling Act, we are prohibited from discussing specific actions, conversations, votes, and so on during executive session meetings. And so that's why it's important for us to show you what we are allowed, because we can show you agenda items and notifications and official communication. What we cannot do is tell you specifically what went on during those meetings.
absolutely. So let's look at a review of the timeline that Renee just laid out for us. And if we look at 9/26, that was the notice of the executive session meeting. On 9/28, the executive session meeting was conducted. And then 2 days later on 9/30, there was an official communication noting the appointment of a new director and election of officers. And as Renee just reiterated, as directors, we're really not permitted to discuss the actions, the conversations, and the votes during executive session meetings. And that's just the way it's set up, and that's the way it should be. However, based on that timeline that we just talked about, one can easily presume that the appointment and the election of officers took place in executive session.
Right, just by connecting those three little dots. So if we go a step further, so we are presuming that the appointment was done in executive session and the election of officers was done in executive session. Well, the law, Davis-Stirling law, is very clear about what meetings the board of directors can do certain business. So they're very clear regarding the appointment of a replacement director and where you can hold an election of officers. Very clear. And this is what we're going to step through. But before we go there, it's important. I'm not sure everybody knows this. There are two different kinds of meetings that the board can hold. We have open session, and in looking at the list of participants tonight, a lot of them I recognize, others I do not. Open session is what we here on Sunnymead Ranch call open forum, which is a board meeting in which homeowners are welcome to sit and watch us conduct the business of the association. So as Robert had pointed out before, Davis-Stirling is very clear about protecting homeowners' interests, our right to observe what the heck is going on. What are they talking about? How are they voting? How are they spending our money? So most of the business of the board is supposed to be conducted in open session. Makes sense, right? The other meeting that we conduct is executive session. Now, this is closed to homeowners. It is confidential information. That's why we can't talk about stuff. Again, the law is very clear about what kinds of things you can discuss in executive session. Legal issues, formation of contracts, disciplinary hearings, right? Personnel issues, payment plans, and foreclosures. All, and if you look at that list, I mean, those are confidential kind of things. And that's why it's limited to just those items. Robert, I'll let you go from here.
Let me jump back to that last slide too for a second, just to
Sure.
add to that, because I think it's important that our homeowners recognize something. That is the importance of an open session. An open session is where you, as the homeowners, get that opportunity to be clear on exactly what business was taken care of, what business is pending, and it's all illustrated on the agenda. For anyone who's ever come to one of our open sessions, you know that the first thing you see when you come in and sign in is that agenda. We post that agenda 4 days ahead of time at a public location. Before COVID, it was always on the bulletin board of the clubhouse so that anyone coming down there could see what we were going to talk about. And I have to stress the importance of open session because this is your meeting where you get to listen and observe what your elected officials are doing. It is the most open means of communicating with the board and the board communicating with you. And when that privilege and right is violated, it should be a concern to every single homeowner, period. That's
Right.
what I'm going to add to that.
I agree, Robert.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, let's move along and start talking about Davis-Stirling here.
Okay, so if you notice on the screen there, the very first thing we wanted to point out was the appointment of directors. Okay, if we look at this listing here, taken directly from Davis-Stirling, it tells you very clearly, there's no ambiguity at all, and the appointment of directors must be done in open session. I'm going to read it for you real quick in case you can't see it on the screen. The main part of it is that filling officer or director vacancies and appointing or removing committee members do not qualify as personnel matters. They need to be done in open session. In this case, it was not done in open session.
Correct. It was not done in front of homeowners. It was done in closed session, behind closed doors.
Right.
That's a big distinction.
Right.
So
No.
The other thing, so we'll take it. So that was number one, Robert. Number two, the election of officers must be done in open session. So that's my topic. And if I look, it says the selection of officers is done at an open session. Since again, it doesn't qualify as an executive session meeting. Remember, we had those 6 topics, legal, blah, blah, blah. Okay, none of those said election of officers. So accordingly, members, homeowners, you and me, have a right to attend that meeting and observe the process. That was not done. This election took place in executive session behind closed doors and not in open session, as clearly the law states.
And Renee, I should add to that as well that in all the years that I've served on the board, this is a process that happens every single year that we have an election. It's the very next thing that happens after the elections have been certified by the inspectors of election, and the winners of that election are acknowledged. And the very, very next thing that happens, because it's important to the homeowners, is that organizational meeting where the only thing done is the election of officers. Absolutely nothing else. I have never, ever heard of an association, especially in California, where they know this is the law. Never heard of an association where that does not take place in open session. And this is the first time in the years I've served that it's ever happened not in open session. So.
Okay. Number 3.
Okay, so directors were not given an opportunity to interview. And going back to Davis-Stirling again, if you look at the bottom of the screen, what it says under open session, while interviewing candidates may be done privately, and that's been done in the past, for a lot of reasons, expediency, the number of candidates that are being interviewed, it was much easier to do it in private. The bottom line, though, is that voting to fill a vacancy does not fall into any of the approved categories that Renee mentioned earlier for executive session. It just simply does not. The vote to fill an empty seat needs to be on the meeting's agenda as well. And again, in this case, that did not happen. It just did not happen.
Okay, and I will say this. It's not as if this has never happened here at Sunnymead Ranch. History shows that in 2016, there was an appointment of a vacancy, and it was conducted according to California law. You'll see on your screen, and for those of you who can't see, we have the minutes, the ratified minutes of a meeting held April 27th, 2016, where here's an item, new board member. A motion was made and duly seconded to accept George Galanis as replacement board member, replacing J.S. Ross. The motion carried unanimously. Further, a motion was made, so that was the replacement. And then a motion was made and seconded to accept George as the treasurer. So this was the election of officers for the board of directors, also carried unanimously. Both done, replacement and election in open session as required by law. And the reason I find this interesting is 3 of the board members that were present back then were present at the meeting held on September 28th. So Mr. Riddick, who has been raising these issues. Mr. Clark was the secretary at the time, and Mr. Williams was also a director, and both of them were present at this meeting. Well, actually, all three of them were present at this meeting. So this should not have been a surprise, like, geez, how should we handle it? How about we handle it according to the law and the way we did it back in 2016?
So going through the timeline again, from September 28th to October 13th, this is what happened. During the first opportunity we had to bring our concerns to the board, and after repeatedly, I mean repeatedly offering solutions to this issue, which were all rejected, we had an opportunity to finally express our concerns during an open forum. This was the very first open forum after this issue had taken place. And for the record, I made the following statement, which you see printed on the screen there. And I'll read it for you for those who may not be able to see it. It says, for the record, Directors Riddick and Osborne wish to voice their continued objection to the improper appointment of Pat Escobar, which was done in executive session contrary to Davis-Stirling Act. Interestingly enough, we were deemed disruptive. There was one more action that took place after I made that statement. And following that, that meeting was adjourned. And in fact, I received a lot of, I'm serious, I received a lot of inquiries from fellow homeowners who were quizzed, who they didn't understand. Why did that meeting end? What happened? Right. Well, this is what happened. This is exactly what happened. After I made that statement, one issue was dealt with and the meeting was adjourned, and we were then accused of interfering with the conduct of the board business. As many of you will remember, receiving in the letter from legal stating that that's exactly what we did. That one right. Simple sentence, that was it.
And I would venture to say that most homeowners, based on one sentence statement provided for the record at an open forum meeting, because it was important to make it for the record, and also to make sure that you, our homeowners, are aware, be made aware that there is an issue here. And as Robert pointed up, we were deemed disruptive and interfering with the conduct of the board business, and that entire agenda of business just got pushed off. So,
and I hate to, or I hesitate to say this, but I think it's fair to say, because some were on that call, you will recall that the way that comment was treated as I was making that comment surprised a lot of folks. It did not follow parliamentary procedure, and it was very out of character for the conduct of the board at that meeting. We'll leave it.
So we're going to go on. So why is this important to you? Why should it be important to you and me and the rest of the homeowners here on Sunnymead Ranch? Well, because ignorance of the law no longer applies here. We cannot, we, the board, the association, can't say like, oh, we didn't know, and therefore we get a pass on it. So everyone knows now, including the board of directors, including the management company, including all of you and me. So we can't hide behind, we didn't know better. And keep in mind that every illegal action, or this illegal board action, because it was pretty clear that it was illegally done, opens our association up to legal challenges for each and every one of the decisions made by this flawed appointment. Now we're talking like every contract awarded, every contract denied, more importantly. So like if we took a big contract away from a vendor with this board that's improperly seated, they could sue us. When we fine homeowners, because that's part of what the board of directors do, fines for CC&R violations, foreclosure initiated. So if we foreclose on somebody and they find out like, hey, that was an improperly seated board, every confidential file, again, remember, keep in mind, executive sessions, confidential information. homeowners who are struggling right now during this COVID, who need a payment plan. Okay, as part of that, they provide information. They provide bank statements. They provide all sorts of information so that the board can make an informed decision. So, and with that, there's this expectation of confidentiality. Guess what? We have somebody who is improperly seated. I'll leave it at that.
And I think it's weird how things fall. We're putting together this presentation for you, and we discovered that last week, a federal judge struck down a policy because the person issuing that policy, and this is important, was not legally serving at the time they issued the policy. And I think what's even more important about this particular case, and that's the link on the screen that you see there if you'd like to go to see it, had to do with DHS and the Secretary of DHS. But what's more important about this particular case is that it was not a local court that made this decision. It was not a state court that made the decision. It was a federal court judge that struck this down. So these are issues that maybe seem innocent on the surface, but when you look down underneath and you realize the implications and the possibilities of what could happen in the future, if we don't apply the law correctly, this is exactly where you could end up at, in federal court in front of a federal judge, making a decision that is going to make a lot of folks here unhappy.
Right. So the summary. So this all boils down to like 3 things. Okay. Important because they're illegal. Okay. Number 1, the appointment of a director must be done in open session. Period. There's not a whole lot of gray area there. Was it done in open session? No. Number 2, the election of officers must be done in open session. Again, pretty clear cut. Was it done? No, it was not done in open session. And number 3, directors were not given an opportunity to interview the candidates, anybody, just no opportunity. So 3 items that are critically important.
And Renee, let me just dovetail on that last one, especially where it says, if you go back to the directors, we're not given an opportunity to interview. I would just remind everyone that probably the most active period in our association is the period between December and February. And why is that? Because that's election time. And why is election time so active? It's because that's when everybody in the association has an opportunity to look at and vet people that are going to be running to represent their best interests. In other words, the elections, and an opportunity to see who the candidates are. And I would think that anybody who lives here would have an interest in wanting to know exactly who those folks are that are going to represent their best interests. The same thing applies in appointments, and there's no getting away from it. You need to know who your board members are. And at minimum, the other board members need to know that as well. And in this case, as Renee said, she and I were not even given an opportunity. Matter of fact, again, we did not even know who this person was until the action took place. So
correct. And Robert, I will say that during our election period, you're correct. We typically have a candidates forum where questions are addressed to the candidates, such as, what's your background? What do you bring to the table? What's your education? Like, what are your passions, and what have you done for the community since you've been here? So all of those things that homeowners rightfully ask us as board members or candidates, you didn't get to ask those questions, and we didn't get to ask those questions either, and that's problematic.
So for homeowners, these are the questions that Renee and I would ask you to consider. Okay. So in looking at the law, and I'm talking all laws, but specifically HOA laws, which laws do you expect your directors to follow? I mean, all of them, none of them, some of them, the ones that they feel most enjoyed doing and performing, and the ones that they want to shy away. Which ones do you expect your directors to follow? I know for me, for Renee, we expect to follow all the laws. There's no exceptions.
Yeah.
Simple as that. No, nothing else need to be said about that. You need to also ask yourself, which laws should be allowed to be disobeyed? None.
None.
None. Simple as that, none. And then finally, does the regular law put the association at risk? Well, of course it does. Of course it does. Anyone out there that is watching this and has, like as Renee said, has a contract with us, for instance, and for some reason that contract is now null and void, they decided to cancel it. The very first thing that contractor is going to want to know is, who made that decision? Oh, it came from the board. Oh, wait a minute. Who's on that board? Oh, wait a minute. There's an argument going on now about maybe somebody not being seated properly on that board. I think I'll see you guys in court. Okay, we'll see you there. I don't think that's something that anybody living here is going to take lightly, and especially when it's going to impact you bottom line. Everything that you invested in living here in Sunnymead Ranch, and that's not something we want to see happen.
Right. I just want to tag on to this, that do I expect us, Robert and I, and the rest of the board to follow the laws? Absolutely. You know, Robert, maybe we should do that kind of oath of office thing. Because yes, we are expected to follow the laws. Do we get to pick and choose which ones we want to follow? Heck no, we don't. I just find it unconscionable that we have to have a town hall meeting to say, yeah, the board of directors, for whatever reason, because they weren't aware at the time, but broke the law, and we find ourselves here. So, and this is the crazy part. We have proposed solutions over and over and over again, because frankly, it's pretty darned easy. Here's what we were advocating. Now, number one is not required by law. We just think that it's responsible to notify the homeowner members, you and me and my neighbors, that there is a director vacancy, either already open or going to be open like next week or something. Not required by law, but just makes a whole heck of a lot of sense. And allow homeowners like you, if you wanted to throw your hat into the ring, give you the opportunity to vie for that and come and interview as a candidate to say, like, here's my background. And I have met some incredible homeowners who have great construction background and contracts background and safety background and so on. Like, those people really could help round out the board. But anyway, interview and vet the candidates. Okay, those first three things, those aren't required by law. That just makes a whole heck of a lot of sense. But number four is absolutely required by law. Discuss and vote at open session. Now, when this started back in September 28th, we said, do it in October, at the October open forum. Nope, didn't happen. Didn't happen, or I don't think it's going to happen for the November open forum. So we could push it out and say, it should happen at December. We'll see. An alternative to that is the board isn't required to actually fill that vacancy. They could just leave it empty until it gets filled through the February election. So you can see that we're not talking some radical solution here. We're talking just something that makes sense, which is do it in open session like the law requires us to do.
So Renee, let me jump on a couple of things you said there real quick, kind of to reemphasize. Can you back up to the previous?
Yep, right there.
I'm going to look at item number 1, number 2, and number 3. And as Renee had just said, they're not actually required by law, but I will tell you this. In my experience with over, again, 55, representing and advocating for over 55,000 HOAs in California, representing almost 13 million HOA residents. Number 1, number 2, and number 3, when there's a vacancy that occurs on a board, those are considered best practices. Nothing more, nothing less, but best practices. And those are the things that are adopted by the majority of HOAs when a vacancy does occur. Not like what happened here, okay? Moving down to number 5, leaving the seat vacant until the February election. I gotta tell you, there's probably a lot of folks on this call right now that do recall that up until this past election, we had 4 seats on our executive committee, and those 4 seats functioned pretty darn good. We kept our association's budget in balance. We achieved a lot of projects being completed. We made a lot of strong decisions. We kept the assessments at the same level. And again, 4 seats. So it's kind of hard to imagine why and what was the urgency to fill this 5th seat suddenly, when we could have easily, as Renee had said, used the alternative of leaving the seat vacant until February and let it go up for election.
And let homeowners.
And let homeowners be involved in that process.
Decide. Right.
Absolutely. Your turn, Dave.
So, so I just want to be mindful. So next steps. Okay. It's important for you to voice your concerns, because Robert and I have been voicing our concerns, and we haven't gotten very far. We've just been called disruptive and I forgot, rabble rousers or something. So voice your concerns. If you have questions about this, as I would hope you should, ask those questions. Demand that this association make this appointment legal. We're not asking for something outrageous. We're just saying, make it legal.
And the reason that's important, just to add to that, Renee, some folks may say, okay, well, what's the big deal? You know, hey, it's just an election. It's just a seat. No big deal. It's not going to impact me. It's not going to affect me at all. I would give you this premise. If you don't know who is making the decisions in a $5+ million corporation, which is what we are, and that if they make the wrong decision, the wrong move, the wrong contract, that your assessments are going to be impacted in a negative way, then shame on you. This is really that important, because we do not know what the agenda is at this point and why it's not being considered, at least the resolutions that we've offered. And as Renee said, these are simple solutions. It should be a no-brainer. Okay,
Right.
We've done it illegally. They called it to our attention. Let's make it right. Let's do the right thing. Simple as that.
Well, and I'll say just one more thing so as not to beat this dead horse. Okay, we are all homeowner volunteers. So the expectation is not that we know everything, but we have to approach everything systematically, logically, be able to stand up, use our, Robert and I can't remember what the legal terminology, but like we have to be able to use our best judgment. And in my opinion, tell homeowners why, at least me personally, why I make a decision. Like we came under a lot of fire before for which fence vendor we chose to finally replace that fence. Lots of flack about it. But you know what? I put together the comparison sheet. I was able to say, this is the reason why I chose this. Did it cost more money than this other one? Yes, it did. And here's my reasoning, right, wrong, or otherwise. And if I'm wrong, I will come back and I will tell you that I made the wrong decision, not out of malice or for some other agenda, but because based on my experience.
And I think that's the way it should be, Renee. I mean, you just outlined exactly how a board should work. It should be a board of peers who take every issue individually and try to make the best decision for the betterment of not only the homeowners, but the association itself. And
Right.
often, and sadly, too often, that does not happen. And we're not unique in that. We're not unique at all in that. You know, all associations don't employ the best practices, but I can tell you this, we try to employ best practices. And it's a shame that in that effort to do just that it ends up being a situation that we have right now. Again, I'll say it again, this was an easy resolution. It should have taken one meeting. And for the life of me, for the life of you, we're trying to figure out, why did that not happen?
Right.
And you know, it's almost like, wow, are you kidding me? Just do it the right way. And we're done with it. But instead, we are where we are now. And there are going to be people out there, we know that this happens, who are going to take sides. Unfortunately, that's a decision that each of us are going to have to make. But we're here tonight to tell you that the letter you received from the council for the association is the same council that represents us when we're sitting on the board. So we have no animus towards them. They're doing their job.
Actually, we have no animus toward anybody.
No, absolutely,
I mean,
absolutely not. And
again, it's just doing what is right for the association to come into compliance with the law.
exactly.
That's really the extent of it. So I'm looking at my time. We have like 15 minutes. So contact us.
Yes.
So you've received the email, I'm sure. This email, directors.sunnymeadranchpca@gmail.com will come to us. And the reason we are asking you to contact us with your concerns is because then we can aggregate. We can, so this, I love this slide here. Fellow homeowners, since that first one went out, these are, and this was all I could fit on this little page and still have it be readable. Yes, obey the law, avoid any future loss and even lawsuits. I have the following concerns. This is unlawful. Thank you, you have my support. Davis-Stirling sets laws to protect homeowners and sometimes legal. The board may act differently, but the law is the law and we must abide by it to ensure fairness. I say err on the side of the law. So what we're doing is collecting this kind of feedback, and we're hoping that given enough homeowner input to say, what the world, just take the mulligan, do it over, do it right, and be done with this. That's what we're hoping. And so that's why we're asking you. I mean, feel free, you can send the emails to us and copy whomever you like, but we're trying to like aggregate the information.
And Renee, to tag onto that, and again, I can't overemphasize this. We have no animus for anyone. No. And in fact, we've even mentioned prior when you and I were talking that if they did it over again, the outcome might very well be the same. We don't know. And if it is, that's fine. That's not the important part of what we're going through. The important part is, again, as someone indicated up here, integrity, transparency. And I remember, I so well remember one of the mantras leading up to the last election was this word transparency. And I remember that there were folks who were screaming very loud that the prior inhabitants on the board did not display any transparency, which was actually not true. But to carry that word forward and then do this just slaps everybody in the face as to what they meant by the word transparency. There was no transparency here. It just simply wasn't. So
because there was no opportunity for transparency because it was done behind closed doors, which is contrary to what the law says.
All we're trying to do is correct the law. That's it.
So, so Robert, I'm going to change my glasses here, and let's see if we have some comments or questions.
I did notice that there are quite a few out there, Renee, so let's try our best to field them. And again, one of the things we have to emphasize again, there are things that we cannot discuss because we are still board members, and if they deal with any conversations or actions taken in executive session, by law, we're not allowed to discuss any of that regardless. So if we say that we can't talk about that, it's not because we don't want to, it's because legally we are not allowed to. All right.
So let me see. Okay, so I can see lots of people. So is this being recorded? Yes, it has been recorded, thankfully. You should have reminded me before because I hit it just a little time into it. Okay, so this is a Robert question. How does Davis-Stirling laws relate to the CC&Rs? I know that there's a hierarchy. Will you explain that to our homeowners?
Absolutely. So our CC&Rs are one set of governing documents, which actually include the CC&Rs, the bylaws, the rules and regulations, and our Department of Corporations statement. All of those are subservient to Davis-Stirling, except, and this is where it gets tricky for those who are always quick to say, well, Davis-Stirling says this or the bylaws say that. Davis-Stirling has a particular peculiarity about it, and that is that if your bylaws are silent on an issue and it's not addressed in Davis-Stirling, you can then interpret the best way that suits your association. So for instance, if it says, for instance, in our CCNRs, a vacancy must be filled, let me put it this way. If there is nothing about how a vacancy is filled described in your governing documents, whether that's the CCNRs or bylaws, but it is described in Davis-Stirling, Davis-Stirling prevails. If there's something in your bylaws that says you can have 5 vice presidents all serving at the same time, and Davis-Stirling does not address that, then your bylaws prevail. They're silent on Davis-Stirling, so whatever the document says, and there's no argument from the other side, that's what prevails. So to answer the question really simply, CCNRs, generally speaking, are subservient to Davis-Stirling. Davis-Stirling is a state law.
Right.
It doesn't get any higher than that except federal law. So when you hear somebody say, well, it says this in our bylaws, I don't care what Davis-Stirling says, that's not true. Okay.
Right. There was something in Homeowners, I do apologize that I don't recall the specifics, but in the Davis-Stirling that says something about unless the association's bylaws state otherwise, then this takes place. So it's very clear on which one trumps what. Okay. So the next question, thank you for this question, it's interesting. What's the subtext here? Do we have any thoughts as to why the board acted in this manner? And I will jump in here and say, we are trying not to be political in any way, shape, or form here. I don't want to speculate. I refuse to speculate as to why the board acted this way and is continuing to act this way. I mean, and this is my own personal opinion, perhaps on September 28th, they felt this was legal. But since then, you know, I mean, you all read the email. I'm sure you clicked on those links. And by the way, the stuff that we were providing here, that original email has the statement, click the link, and you'll go to it so you can read it for yourself. So since that time, Pam, I really don't know. Do we think this has anything to do with the management company? It was funny, I had a conversation with my daughter who had done property management years ago, and she said, homeowners are not expected to know all of the ins and outs. Where in the heck is your homeowners, or where's your property management company? Why aren't they providing you the proper advice? Robert, do you want to chime in with anything there?
You know, and I'm going to echo everything you said so far, that I really don't know why. I don't want to speculate, because then it'll become for others political fodder, and that's not
right.
This is not about anything political. This is about doing the right thing. This is about employing best practices, and this is about just following the law. If the shoe were on the other foot and they brought the same argument to me, I would say, you know what, I'm a learned man. I can listen to the other side, and
right.
if I'm convinced that it's that I'm wrong, I have no issue stepping out and saying I'm wrong. And I've been on the board for 12 years, and there've been many times when I've said in public and in front of this board, in front of homeowners, yeah, I made a mistake, I screwed up. So
right.
None of us are perfect, and like you just said a moment ago, we're volunteers. We don't get paid a dime for this. You know, this is out of our heart. This is out of our love for our community that we even serve. And when you see something like this, I had a manager friend of mine tell me 2 days ago, Robert, what are you guys doing? What are you doing? Do you really need to go through that? What are you doing? And I told him the same thing I've told everybody else. I live here. I was elected to serve on this board and do everything I could to make the quality of life here better for everybody here. And this is not getting it done. I'm scared to death right now. I'm seriously, I'm scared to death right now that some contract is going to be voided in the future. And that contract is going to come back and say, who did this? We've been with you for 10 years, 12 years. Why you didn't even give me a reason? What happened?
Right.
Oh, wait a minute.
Exactly.
As you said earlier, and we're going to be dealing with that.
It's just risky. There was another question. Do you have concerns about the new board member? Frankly, I don't really know the new board member. I know her. I could see her at Stater Brothers and they would know who she is. I've spoken to her probably 2-3 times at an open forum meeting. That's it. So am I concerned? I don't know enough about this person because I was never given an opportunity to know anything about her background, her business experience, her whatever, nothing. So am I concerned? I'm concerned only to the extent that I don't know enough of anything. So I've been accused of being clueless, but maybe not for those reasons.
Let me add to that too, Renee, from my perspective. And,
Sure.
and I really have to say this one more time. There is no animus on my part, and I know from your part as well, towards any of this happening and anybody involved. I do know Pat from several interactions over the past year, but I only know her from casual interactions. Beyond that, I don't know anything else about her, which is, for me, it's important to be serving with someone who I at least have an idea, what their philosophy is on things. What are their ideas? What are their aspirations? What do they bring to the table to help me do my job more effectively so that I can help her do her job more effectively?
Right.
I don't know those things. I was never given an opportunity to even ask those things at all. Right. So I would reserve my saying anything negative about anyone, including Pat. She seems like a lovely lady, and I respect anybody in our association, and especially someone I don't know that much about. So
Right.
I have no concerns about her at all as an individual. I do have concerns about, and I'm honest about this, about how she was seated on the board.
Right. That's the issue here. So it's not personality or anything. It's just that piece. I'm going to move on. So Cynthia, thank you for this question. Can you show the homeowners the algorithms that must be done to make it legal? Okay, mistakes have been made, so we need to fix them. You know what? That's exactly what we've been saying. So it was done incorrectly. We have, for those golfers, we have a mulligan. We have a do-over. We can't do that much in life where you get to do it over. But guess what? We can do it over, and that's what we want to have happen. So that's, and the thing is that they just have to agree to it. So that's the answer.
Renee, can you go back to Jim's real quick? Because I think this is an example of where he's asking a very pointed question. Unfortunately, because it falls into that realm of executive privilege, we really can't give him an answer. So could you read his question for everyone?
So Jim Kelly, does the Sunnymead Ranch lawyer understand this violation? And if so, has this been brought to the attention of the lawyers by the board of to the attention of the lawyers by the board directors? Unfortunately, we cannot, we don't want to play coy here, but we can't discuss that. Unfortunately, Jim, and I do appreciate the question. Does the Davis-Stirling Act offer a remedy for demanding that an open session be held? That's a great question.
Well, actually, we've been talking about it all evening in several different ways, and the answer for you, Lawanda, is that again, employing best practices. Davis-Stirling is not going to tell you what best practices are. They're going to leave that to each individual board of directors to figure out. It's one of the jobs that we're entailed with taking on when we say we're going to be a board of director. So no, Davis-Stirling doesn't offer, but what they do is provide you the roadmap for how it should be done. It's up to the board members to decide whether they're going to employ that roadmap. And so far as we've seen, they've chosen not to.
Right. And so that's, again, remember when we said, what's your part in this? If you have listened to us over this last hour and said, wow, it seems pretty clear that some mistakes were made and can be easily fixed, this is where you come in. You have got to make your voice heard and say, what the heck? Let's get this fixed. So Robert, thank you. It's Mr. Lucas here. As a homeowner, what remedies can I use to help remedy making the board return to legal compliance? Frankly, he's upset that people have callously put our entire community in legal peril, and we agree. So make your voice heard. Email us, email them. We are going to try to make this happen. Who started the lawsuit? There is no lawsuit, contrary to what has been said.
And I think that's an important point to make, Renee, because everybody on this call received that letter as well from legal that said we were sidetracked because of a threat of a legal lawsuit.
Right.
I'm telling you right now, for those of you who are listening, you can take our word for it or not. But I'm telling you right now, Renee will reinforce this. We never, ever, ever, ever threatened a lawsuit against the same association that we sit on. We would never. That would be ridiculous. And so, but we still don't understand why that claim was made and posted in that letter. But the fact of the matter is that there is no lawsuit as far as I'm aware of, and we never threatened a lawsuit. So if somebody says that we did or that there is, I would I would ask them to prove it.
Right. So and frankly, for those interested, we can provide emails that state like we want to talk about this. So the fact that we have brought it to the board's attention and we want it to be rectified, they are taking that as a threat of a lawsuit. And frankly, that's not what that is. That's saying we want it rectified. We want this board to come into compliance with the law, pure and simple. So no lawsuit. Is there something we can do to recall the board members who did this deed? Well, we have a election coming up. So we're not presuming to unseat anybody. Again, what we want to do is to have this appointment done legally, period. The election will be the election, and you guys can always, cast your votes accordingly.
Right. And I would just add to that, Renee, that a lot of times actions like what we're going through right now are common. And usually the end result and how they get resolved is either one of two ways, either by legal remedy, which can be expensive, time consuming, and very damaging to not only the reputation of the association involved, but to the individuals. The other remedy is the power of the vote.
Right.
And if you think that we're wrong, vote us out.
Right.
What was that?
But keep in mind, there is an election coming up in February, but there's a lot of time between now and February to make decisions.
Yep.
And that puts us at risk of poor decisions. And I'll leave it at that. Besides the legal folks seeming to be, besides seeming to be ignorant of Davis-Stirling, what about Seabreeze? Were they aware of the actions and did they approve? Well, the property management company doesn't have approval or disapproval of what the board does. Whether they provided oversight, possibly. Did the board take it? Don't know.
And Renee, it's important to emphasize that as well, that one of the expectations from any management company is to provide sound advice on how to best manage an association. And I think that there are going to be some who would wonder, would this be considered sound advice to basically pick a fight over a non-issue and expend monies defending the actions and jeopardize a lot of things, contracts in play, monies to be spent, the budget being in sync and in balance. So I would look at and question, did that happen? Was there counsel provided? You and I both know we don't know the answer to that. But again, that's a fair question to ask. And that is the expectation from HOAs for their management companies. Provide us with that guidance that helps us make prudent and proper decisions.
Right. So a question is, so what if the board decides they want the appointment to stand as is without an open session? Is there any other possible recourse or remedy? That's a great question, LaWanda. Don't know.
I think the easy question again is what we said a moment ago. You have two ways of resolving issues like this. One is a legal issue, and one is a legal method. And well, actually, there's three. There's acquiescence. You know, they can say to themselves, you know, what are we doing this for? You know, this is ridiculous. Let's just do it the right way as we've been asked to do, and it's over. The second way is a legal action. No one on our side is threatening any kind of legal action contrary to what you were told. So that's not an option at this point. And then the third one is, of course, again, the ballot box. If you think this was improper action, express your voice by letting those who were responsible for this action being protracted to hear how you feel. And I'll say it again. If you don't want to vote me or Renee, because we're both running, if you don't want to vote for us, that's fine. You know, we can live with that. You know, this isn't about egos. You know, we've had a good run, and we would like to continue it in the best interest of the community. But you know what? This is not life and death for either one of us. We're just trying to do the best we can for this association and make sure it doesn't legally. If you think the other side did something wrong, you have the same opportunity and the same right to express yourself through the vote, and you can do that as well.
So a couple of other things here. Chris, are the accusations on Director Williams posting on Facebook's going to be addressed? I'm not, Mr. Williams posts a lot of allegations, so I'm not, you would have to fine tune that. But that's, you know what, I'll rephrase that. Unless it has to do with this particular issue, we would not address it here, because we are trying to stay single focused. We want this appointment to be made legal, either by doing it at open session or having the seat remain vacant. Pure and simple. The mulligan.
So I would add that, Chris, for your answer, from my perspective, SW is entitled to say whatever he wants to say or she wants to say on Facebook. We have no control over that. I would just advise that use logical thinking whenever you read anything from anyone on social media. We all know that social media can be a blessing, and it can also be a horrendous experience, especially if you don't know how to deal with it and you can't tell the truth from fiction. So as Renee said, we're not here to discuss anything about that individual. We're here to discuss this issue. The fact that he's part of that, again, we're discussing the issue itself, not the individual's response.
Right. Yes, absolutely. So we appreciate that. I mean, and part of our presentation, the email that went out and this presentation, is to be very focused, not make allegations, unfounded allegations. I mean, frankly, I think it was a mistake made honestly, but they are not willing to acknowledge that and make it right. And we are very specific that there's only 3 things, and we can point you back specifically to the wording that says it must be done in open session. It must be done in open session. So not unfounded allegations, documented fact. Another question, how many seats are up for election in February? I am up, Robert is up, Sonny Williams is up, and now based on our bylaws, Pat Escobar, or that seat, we'll say, is up for election. So that's 4. 4 seats will be up. The only person who is not running is Mona Henderson.
Okay.
Okay, so let me scan through here and see if there's any other questions that I've overlooked.
It doesn't look like it, but I think this would be a good point to let everyone that joined us tonight. And by the way, thank you so much for taking the time. We know that this is you probably would have enjoyed doing a million other things than for us, you know, sit up here and be talking heads for an hour. But we appreciate the fact that you thought it was important enough for you to at least stop by, visit, and take part of the meeting under consideration. I think that what we want to also pass on to you is that this is not over. This, you know, our efforts will continue, and with your support, and getting back to us on your concerns, we can feed that directly to the board of directors in the future and let them see that, you guys, this is not operating in a blind field. People are watching, people are listening now. And more important, we chose this venue as an opportunity to give you our side of the story, because so far you've only heard their side. And unfortunately, it's not accurate, it's not correct, it's not presented as them doing something that was legal. And it's fair that you know. And you take away from this meeting whatever you want. You can believe whatever you want, but again, we chose this as an opportunity to at least share with you our side of the story.
And I will say this. So again, maybe I'll go back to that. directors.sunnymeadranchpca@gmail.com. Or you can find stuff up on Nextdoor. But if you go back to that original email that we sent out to our homeowners, read it over again. Click the links. We don't want you taking our word for this. We want you to look at this and say, this is what they did. Wow, this is what the law says. So please don't take our word for it. We want you to go out there. So I did find, so we have some owners who are pretty savvy here. They clicked some Q&As here. As far as you know, is the illegal executive committee still conducting HOA business at this time? Yes, absolutely, they are.
Yeah. And that's the whole premise of why we're reacting the way we are, is to make sure that you're aware that there is going to be money spent. There are going to be contracts looked at and reviewed. There are going to be actions taken. And right now, I can almost guarantee you that the majority of the almost 8,000 to 10,000 residents we have here in Sunnymead Ranch, the majority of them have no idea of what the qualifications of these folks are that are making those decisions, period. None, absolutely none. So
to that end, we put a kind of like a little teaser at the end of that one email. So as much as we'd like to say, like, this is the only thing that concerns us, there are other issues that concern us. So that question, Robert, Mr. Lucas, I believe it was,
yeah.
as you, there are other things, and that I plan on documenting for our homeowners to say, I raised as a board member questions regarding financials and invoices and process and stuff like that, that to this date, I still have not received a response back from. Things that concerned me and most certainly would concern you. So I'm going to document things again, because it is not our practice to just make unfounded accusations. If we're going to say something, trust me, you're going to have an email, you're going to have screenshots, you're going to have documentation, because that's the way we approach issues.
And one last thing from me as well, Renee, and that is simply this, that I would challenge anyone out there to ask the question, do you mean to tell us that because of that one statement that you made, Robert, that you and Renee have now been excluded from any involvement in any element of Sunnymead Ranch's governance? In other words, not just this issue, but every single issue dealing with the governance of this association, because I made that statement and Renee supported it. Because that's the only thing they're saying, is that by making that statement, we were disruptive. Think about that. Think about that. The experience that you're looking at here and making sure things get done here correctly has now been subrogated because I made a comment one sentence long and she supported that. And now we are now effectively non-operational on your board. The same board you elected us to represent your interest on. Not a single thing can we do. Nothing. So think about that.
So kind of, yeah. So it is kind of shocking. So we really appreciate you all coming, and and the vote of support that we've seen throughout these comments. So remember, email us, get your neighbors to email us, whatever. That's the only way that this is going to move forward and get corrected, is from honest concern from homeowners about our association.
And Renee, you may want to also remind them that there is a tentative open forum scheduled for the 24th. For those, if that meeting actually takes place, that is another opportunity for you to express your concerns, hopefully in support of what we've shared with you tonight. But also, if you disagree with it, that's fine too. But again, that opportunity will be presented to you at open forum on the 24th, I believe. It's tentative.
Yeah. So, well, let's explain. So, homeowners, typically, the board doesn't meet in November open forum because it's just a couple of days before Thanksgiving and people are busy. And they also don't meet typically in December because it's just days before a major holiday. Now, that's not to say that, I mean, because I was told, like, yes, we're going to have a meeting on the 24th. So we'll see. I haven't seen anything published about it. It would be great, but who knows? Also, the other piece of input I would love to hear from people is, did anyone receive their roundup this month for the month of November? Because it's the 18th and I have yet to receive my roundup.
Nor have I, Renee.
So.
Nor have I. So you may want to use that as maybe a question if the meeting on the 24th actually does occur. If I were a homeowner, and which I am, and I'm going to ask that question as well, where's the communications coming from the board right now? Or I'm sorry, the executive committee. I'm getting literally nothing. I don't know where the Facebook page is at this point. I don't know where our website is at this point. I don't know why I didn't receive a newsletter, nor did Renee receive a newsletter. So
and also, let's talk about, we had finally gotten this board to understand that during times of COVID, we needed to communicate. So with our membership. And so we finally got them to agree to send an email out on the 1st and the 15th of each and every month. And again, nothing on the 1st of November. We got the 15th of November, that's it. So communication is not their strong suit. Oh, so Cynthia, you received your roundup. Okay. That's good. Can you tell me when, perhaps? I love it when you guys all know how to chat and stuff like that.
Great.
We're a bunch of geeks here.
By the way, Renee, we might want to also share with them that this is a form and format that works well for both of us. Mm-hmm. And I think this is going to be our format of choice for future communications with homeowners. We're going to continue to have Zoom meetings and invite the community. Those who want to participate, you're more than welcome. Doesn't matter what your position is. We just want to hear from you.
Okay. I also want to point out, because somebody had sent me a note saying, stop spending our money. Okay. Robert and I are not spending your money.
No, we're not.
This Zoom webinar, that's on our dime. We paid for it, not the association. Our MailChimp account that provides those nice looking emails, that's on our dime. Okay. We're just saying, like, we're not spending association money doing this. This is us. And we're doing this because it's important to us.
Absolutely. So why don't we say goodnight to these folks? And I want to eat dinner, have me a glass of wine.
So folks, we really do. And we had 23 homeowners on tonight's call. So I really do appreciate that. That's more than we certainly typically do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Chris, a special shout out to you for providing your group site on Nextdoor. I think it's a great vehicle for communicating with the community. And I just wanted to say thank you very much for providing that to all of us. For those who have not gone out there, it's a pretty informative group. It's called Sunnymead Ranch Suggestion Box. If you're a member of Nextdoor, you might want to go and visit it. A lot of information is good out there. If you're not a member of Nextdoor, you can contact me if you want to, or you can contact any of the leads. You can just go straight to nextdoor.com and say, I'd like to be a member, and they'll take you from there. But it's an excellent vehicle for communicating.
Right. So thanks, guys. We really do appreciate it. If we've omitted answering any of your questions, by all means, reach out to us at directors.sunnymeadranchpca@gmail.com. By the way, if you guys didn't know, PCA stands for Planned Community Association. Took me a long time to get that one.
2 people raised their hands. Carolyn Golder raised her hand. Can we get Carolyn? Can you put it in chat mode and we'll all see it? Is she still there? No.
Nope. That's okay.
Okay.
So I think we have all of the questions answered as best as we can. So we're going to call it an evening. It's now 7:19. Thank you so much for showing your interest in our community.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone. Good night.
Bye.
Bye. All right.